In Amos 5:26 we read something that is huge. Many reasons. And these should show us, or those who have an issue with the fact that Yahweh uses Satan, that Yahweh created those entities and he still uses them because of the fact that, well, they were created for a reason, and everything that Yahweh does has a purpose, and nothing will fall out of that purpose, even if it may seem so to those who have supposedly eyes to see. So this verse is key. Is in the Old Testament. Jewish people claim to believe in the Old Testament, and I mean that's the only thing they believe. However, when you actually hear from them and their beliefs, you start to see that they actually incline for the Talmud. They don't read the Tanakh anymore. They just read the Talmud because to them that is the interpretation of the Tanakh. So it's like, why would I go and read the Tanakh if I have the Talmud to explain it to me? Not understanding that that is actually the explanation given to them by Baal. That's why they call it Torah Shebaal Peh. And I know they translate it differently, the oral Torah, but in the same word, we find Baal is the one that gave it to them. So the interpretation that they have is wrong. That's why even though they believe in the Tanakh, they don't understand it. Even though there is a lot of knowledge in Judaism, there is a lot of wisdom in Judaism, there is no understanding, and that's why they don't accept Mashiach yet, at least those who are truly Israelites. So this verse is key. They claim to believe in the Old Testament, the Tanakh. Clearly they don't call it the Old Testament because to them there is no new one. So Amos 5:26 says, "But ye have borne the tabernacle of your Moloch and Kium, your images, the star of your God which ye made to yourselves." This verse is huge for many reasons. First, Yahweh is talking to Israel, and he's making reference to what happened in the desert. So I will read a little bit in context just because we're doing this study real quick. It says in verse 25, it says, "Did you offer me sacrifices and offerings in the wilderness for 40 years, O house of Israel?" So he's talking about the 40 years in the desert, in the wilderness, which everybody's sure, Jews and Christians, even though they have the Bible, and I mean Bible also in wrong translation, like meaning wrong translations, because it's also there. Even if they have wrong translations, this is written pretty clearly. So I hope this is clear to those who are listening. Yahweh is talking about those 40 years. Both Jews and Christians believe that they were covered and they had the presence of the Almighty Yahweh in the Mishkan, the tabernacle. Yet Yahweh, through a prophet who is written in scriptures and therefore is a true prophet, tells us, "Did you offer," and that is Yahweh speaking through the prophet, "did you offer me sacrifices and offerings?" That is a rhetorical question. That means no. All the sacrifices during those 40 years were done for somebody else. This is key. Already we find that those sacrifices of animals were done for an entity that is not Yahweh. "Did you offer me sacrifices and offerings?" No. "In the wilderness for 40 years, O house of Israel? You also carried the tabernacle." Like I was saying, the tabernacle of your Moloch. There is a translation that there says of your king. They translate it very differently. They write Sukkot or Sukkot instead of tabernacle as if it were the name of an entity. However, Sukkot is actually tabernacle. Moloch, they translate it as king, but is the name given to Baal in other nations. So Moloch is Lucifer, Halel, and Kium is Saturn, Samael. And like I always say, just in case, if you go and read In Judaism, about Samael, it will appear that he's connected to Mars. Like I said, when he started, he was connected to Saturn as Kronos. But when he fell from the favor and became blind and the father of death, that is when he started being connected with Mars, the god of war. That is why the first beast, who is empowered by, who will be empowered to make war in the world, he represents Samael. And he comes in a red horse, like the red planet, because he's bringing war. So, but ye have borne the tabernacle of your Moloch and Kium, mentioning two entities, very important, two entities, Halel and Samael. Your images, so they made images of each entity. And then after saying two entities and saying plural images, he goes to the singular and says the star of your God. So after two entities, two images, there is one star of one God. So what it's saying is that through the mixing of those two entities, they came to a different God. They made a God. And that is what we see in Revelation 13, that the first beast and the false prophet will get together and make an image of the beast, who will be the God of the world, who will claim to be the Messiah, being the Antichrist, of course. So he will claim to be God on earth, as they expect him to do so. So the same we see here. We are seeing here how Moloch and Kium were two entities who they worship. That represents how they worship Halel, worship Samael. They mix those doctrines to have the doctrine that they follow. And through the mixing of those doctrines, they will end up accepting the false Messiah, Azazel. Now, the star of your God which ye made to yourselves. Nowadays, Jewish people have a star that represents them. And everybody knows that, and everybody sees that star and says that is the Jewish star. And they call it the Star of David, even though David never wore that star, because Yahweh was against that star. On the other hand, Shlomo, because they call it the seal of Shlomo, Shlomo did use it once he rebelled against Yahweh and started using idolatry, because the wife, one of the many wives whom he married, the one from Egypt, his Egyptian wife, brought the talisman of Saturn, which is the star that now they use and they placed on the flag of Israel, when the actual symbol for Israel is the menorah, instead of the star that they are using, because of David Rothschild, who decided that that should be the image that they would worship in their flag, because they want to give that country to their false god whom they created, who pretty soon will appear, as they are expecting Messiah, unfortunately. So, but in summary, Yahweh is telling us that the people, after being redeemed from slavery in Egypt, were not carrying with them the presence of the eternal Elohim, but the spirit that inhabited the Mishkan, or tabernacle, was actually that of Moloch and Kium, also represented by the two cherubim in the most set apart place. That of Moloch and Kium, Halel and Samael, like the two cherubim that covered the Ark of the Covenant, where the two tablets were with the spiritual and physical commandments. 4 spiritual commandments, 6 physical commandments. Those are the 10 commandments. It is for this reason that they created the hexagram, which is composed of 2 triangles, one that ascends and one that descends, to represent the celestial second heaven, of course, not the third heaven, which is way above their heads in every way. So, one triangle that ascends and one that descends, to represent the celestial and the earthly. which in turn is controlled by one of these two entities. So that's why Yahweh mentions two entities but then one star, two images but then one star. There are many ways in which this is interpreted, but one of those, two images, two triangles, one up, one down, you mix them and you got one star. This star is composed of 6 sides, 6 lines, and 6 angles of 60 degrees. A symbol in which we find the number 666, and that functions as an image to worship the 3 manifestations of Satan through the union of the 2 triangles that represent Samael, which would be the flesh of the false Messiah and is represented by the triangle going down because Samael was the first entity to fall, and Halel, which represents the spirit that will enter, falling down from the heavens, the second heaven in Revelation 12, that will enter the false Messiah. But as we know, what Lucifer said, I will ascend to the mount of Elohim and sit at the right, put my throne next to it and be like the Most High. Isaiah 14. So Samael fell, that's why he's the triangle going down, and Lucifer said that he would ascend, that's why he's the triangle going up. While the union of both triangles is connected with Azazel or Azazel, which will be the soul that will enter the false Messiah, and is Abaddon, who comes out of the abyss in Revelation 9 when it is opened by the angel that falls. So the flesh represents Samael, the triangle going down. The spirit that will enter it to give it supposed life, temporal life of course, is that of Lucifer, the triangle that goes up. And the mixing of both, when the spirit enters that body, then there will be a soul, and that will be Azazel, the god that the world will worship. And if they don't worship him, they will he will kill them. So hence the Jewish star represents the false Messiah, and that is key. The star that is on Israel's flag is a satanic symbol that King David never used, even though today it is called the Star of David. On the other hand, Shlomo, who turned away from Yahweh to worship idols, made use of this symbol once he had turned away from the truth, since it was included in most of the information that Shlomo wrote regarding the control of demons through different methods, which is why even today this talisman is used by sorcerers and witches to put spells on people, reason why the word hex from hexagram is used to refer to curses. It is sad that many Christians also use the star thinking that it is something positive, not understanding that it is a symbol of evil, and not knowing that the reason why Jews use it, not knowing the actual reason why Jews use it, which is why Yahweh refers to them in the previous message as the synagogue of Satan, meaning those who use that symbol knowing what it is, and those who are not true Yahudim and obviously then feel like that symbol represents them. Acts 7:42 and 43 is in the New Covenant, so Jewish people won't accept this one, but Christians should. And we have a confirmation of what I just mentioned. And it says, then Yahweh turned and gave them up to worship the host of heaven. So Yahweh, because of the sins of Israel, turned from them. Just like they turned from him, he turned from them. And then they started worshiping the angels that Yahweh was previously using to talk to them, pretty much. So they ended up worshiping messengers instead of the one who sent the messengers. Then Yahweh turned and gave them up to worship the host of heaven. As it is written in the book of the prophets, O ye house of Israel, have ye offered to me slain beasts and sacrifices by the space of 40 years in the wilderness? Yeah, ye took up the tabernacle of Moloch, Halel, and the star of your god Rempham, Samael, figures which ye made to worship them, and I will carry you away beyond Babylon. Obviously, in this case, the translation is a bit different because of the fact that I just said New Testament, and I'm using verses and actually translation that most people have in order for them to see the connections. And as we know, the New Testament, the quotes that has from the Old Testament are taken from the Septuagint and that is why it is a bit different than the one that I read from the Old Testament, even though in Hebrew it's exactly the same. But since Hebrew has very profound meaning to each word, is that we can understand several things from the same words. That's why those translations seem different in certain parts. So the verse of Amos, which is also quoted in Acts, reveals to us that the Laodicean congregation is connected with the false Elohim mentioned in the verse, coupled with the fact that this Kehila, like Israel, has moved away from the true Elohim to end up worshipping Kium, pretty much Satan, Samael, Saturn, Kronos, through images, symbols, and false doctrines without being able to recognize who they truly worship, for they are blind.